What was your nope? Done watching reading this moment? My name is Becca. I went over to my friend Katie's house one evening, and she put in the first Ring movie. The opening act consists of two girls named Becca and Katie watching the Ring tape and dying being sent to an asylum. We cut that crap off real fast. I was done with Bones when they pulled the balls that some butthole had carved a computer virus into a skeleton, and when the Bones team scanned the skeleton with their magic computer it somehow uploaded the virus into the system or something. God, it was so freaking stupid. A blog or something where a girl went into detail about how great it was having sex with her dog and how to do it for the first time. I didn't get through it. 18ish years ago kids at school told me about rotten.com. Being a stupid teen I checked it out. Very first thing I see is a dead baby whose chest cavity was exposed. I immediately closed out and swore never to go back. Oh god, weightlifter who lifted too much weight and had a rectal prolapse. After I became numb to that sight, found out they had a Deadpool for random people in the world. When I was little, my mom was showing me some historical movie she liked when she was a kid. I remember it was colonial, and I think it was a true story, but I don't remember the name. A guy burned his hand pretty bad, and they made the mistake of bandaging the fingers together. When he was finally able to keep the dressings off, his fingers had healed together. For some reason, I assumed they were going to rip them apart and let them heal the right way. I turned that crap off so fast. I highly doubt they actually did that, but I'll never know. Johnny Tremaine, I'm thinking. I've never actually read the book or saw the movie, but that's what springs to mind when those points are mentioned. The Fault in Our Stars. The pretentious douchebag dude who carries around cigarettes and never smokes them because you put the killing thing between your teeth but don't give it the power to do the killing. Like, give me a freaking break. That whole book was I am Verismith levels of cringe. My girlfriend says the exact same thing, but I always thought that their pretentiousness was the point. We weren't supposed to be thinking, ooh how cool and intellectual these kids are. I just read it as these kids are pretentious idiots, but that's exactly how a lot of fairly smart teenagers act. Their behavior felt realistic to me. Somebody linked a fanfic on AskReddit last year. I, being curious, clicked on it. Big mistake. First warning sign. The entire story was one huge paragraph. It was highly NSW. I made it in 4 sentences in when I noped out. From what I remember, Mario was taking a crap in Yoshi's mouth. I'm so curious now. In the book, Summer of My Amazing Luck, girl is in a mother's home living on welfare. She is trying to find out who the father is. She has a friend, Karen, whose child's father is Karen's father. In the meantime, as our character looks for her lover, she has memories fantasizing about him and his hairy, oily back. Fast forward to the end of the book, we find out she is a 14-year-old who got drunk, had sex with her equally drunk father and got pregnant. Freaking done. Why I remember this crap, especially that freaking quote, I don't know. Bleg. I really can't think of anything else to say but bleg. It was a book written in first person and the main character was describing how much he enjoyed rape. I don't need to be in that guy's head. There was an ad years ago, pre me having kids, that showed a car with 2 adults in front seat and a baby in a baby's seat in back. The video was in the news as it had been banned in some countries. It was created as a wake-up call to those who text and drive. Anyway, it shows the car being hit from the front as the driver wasn't concentrating and veered into oncoming traffic. They survive. Then it shows the car being T-boned a couple of seconds later. Cut to the baby lifeless in its seat. That freaking undid me. I howled. I'll never forget that ad. I'm a mum these days and nope, don't want to think or write anything else. I was forcing myself to read a book that I really wasn't enjoying. I had been kicking the dead horse for a week at least. Then I hear an interview on the radio with the author of the book I was trying to read. He said that if you don't enjoy a book, stop reading it immediately and don't prolong your agony. Done. I am doing this right now with Sword of Shannara. I am 124 pages in and every page has felt like such a chore. I had to walk away from the American Psycho book every once in a while. The movie isn't a tenth as graphic as the book and some of the descriptions were pretty rough. It's a really tough read. It's so surreal and almost campy and then bam, graphic and terrifying. It's a great book, but you have to be in a good space to start reading it or it can really be too much. I read it on the beach and kept putting it down to just watch the ocean for a while. It needs intermissions. When I was a kid I discovered torrenting and decided to find an MP3 of a reading of Sleeping Beauty because I thought it'd be nice to fall asleep to, and it was one of my favorite Disney movies. I was pretty new to torrenting and had no idea what kind of stuff was out there. The file was called Sleeping Beauty MP3. It started out with the standard story, but instead of kissing her awake the prince banged her awake, then made her ride with him back to his kingdom completely nude. I stopped listening when he announced that she was to be sent to a sex dungeon for her sex slave training. That was a series of books by Anne Rice. Dipper Goes to Taco Bell, except my nope didn't hold through, and I read it all. I couldn't pick up my phone for like 2 days. I heard about that one. I resolved to consign it to the same fiery depths of Nope as Cupcakes, the somewhat infamous MLP horror fic. My latest one came from a CG animated show called Troll Hunters. Girl gets on the MC's case for punching a bully in the face and knocking his tooth out. This was after he tried negotiating and walking away from the fight. I was just like, seriously? What the frick was he supposed to do? Just let the butthole grind him into the dirt because fighting is wrong? The anti-violence stuff is always irritating in TV and movies. It's obviously supposed to teach some kind of moral, but in the context of the story, killing people is usually the obvious best choice. Browsing some sex stories on some site I can't remember, clicked on some babysitter story. Babysitter starts doing something with a kid. Frick that noise, I'm out. Most recently, it was during the Assassin's Creed movie when Callum Lynch completely destroyed the mechanical claw from Toy Story Animus by performing a leap of faith. Literally walked out of the theater and went home. We need him to achieve full synchronization. Oh crap, he actually did it and took down the machine that was designed for this very thing. This one thing we needed him to do. Last episode of Downton Abbey season 3. I know there was an actor dispute, etc, but redacted. S death just seemed so gratuitous and unnecessary. I was finding it relaxing until it fell to the Game of Thrones syndrome where suddenly it was cool to just kill people off every week. Yeah, they lost 2 of their most popular characters because their actors wanted to do different things. I don't think she recovered from it, but he has. He is currently leading an X-Men TV show on Fox and is the male lead in Beauty and the Beast. Okay, there was this series of books, historical fiction set in the Holocaust. It was alright. There was this romantic subplot, but in the second book the characters are happily married. No more tension between them. Now, as we all know, that's when romance gets boring, and I'm sure the author realized that problem. So what happens in the third book? The woman gets kidnapped by Winston Churchill himself, who tells her that her marriage wasn't legit. He also recruits her to do some sort of espionage, which solves the other side of the lack on conflict, the fact that she'd already escaped from Austria entirely. Why is she so suitable for this mission? She's blonde. It was an awful feeling because I'd really enjoyed everything by that author up until that point, but suddenly had to question everything. I have other series by her I'll have to reread to see if I was delusional before. It's too bad when good writers get caught up in turning out book after book in a mediocre series when they're capable of better. Any stories about that folklore monster where thinking about it draws its attention to you, and the more you learn about it the more it knows about you? As fascinating and scary fun those stories are, you know what, I'm just out now. Guys, maybe there's a reason he's not telling us the name. X-Files theme. I went to see Hostel in the cinema and walked out. I can't remember exactly what caused it, but I just realized that unless you actually enjoy watching someone being tortured, there's not a lot going for that film. Yep, I've heard that's more torture-y than an actual horror film. Okay, time to prove how much of a P I am. I, with a very strong passion, hate horror. I don't enjoy being scared and it just isn't fun for me. With that being said, my buddy wanted me to play some Amnesia: The Dark Descent. You know how far I got? The first room where the fricking door closed and all the candles blew out. Nope, the frick away from his desk and almost through his headphones. I don't mind being scared too much. I'm just not a big fan of those horrors that do their best to make you sick. I'm looking at you, Human Centipede. Arrow. sometime in between them beating Damien Dark the first time by having a character from an animated web series steal his totem and smash it, and when they killed off Laurel. I gave the new season 3 episodes due to the promise of Dolph Lundgren, but I don't like anyone on the new crew, so I think I'm done for good. Least Flash is good. That time Felicity broke off their engagement and then stood up from her wheelchair and walked out of the apartment was also incredibly dumb. A book called The Time Traveler's Wife. All over the back of the book it got rave reviews about how this author practically reinvented literature. It looked pretty cool, so I got it. A few pages in I already knew it was terrible. I made it to maybe the second chapter, but after the sentence by now I had an erection tall enough to ride a ride at an amusement park all by itself. I closed the book and never opened it again. Right after the Red Wedding in Game of Thrones. Stared at the credits screen for about 10 minutes then decided to go to bed instead of finishing the last episode of the season. Red Wedding was brutal like TV and book. It was this dumbass book about a teenager whose dad gets murdered for some chip he has and she's blamed for it. Sounds at least mildly interesting. A bit of running from the murderer and the police. I stopped reading at one point. The teenager gets a call from her dad to meet her somewhere urgently and that it is serious. What would you if your father did that to you? Presuming you have a good relationship with him. Fix yourself a freaking snack, of course. Why would you do anything else? So of course the dad gets murdered because the girl wants to put on makeup, get dressed and make a freaking sandwich. She has a chip her dad told her to grab, but then she hears the murderer come into the house looking for the chip. The tension is rising, but I was still mad about the sandwich part. Murderer walks around the house while the girl is hiding under the car and says some pretty obvious crap that points to he's the murderer. Like stupidly obvious stuff that you'd have to be brain dead not to understand. Guy eventually leaves and the girl does the magnum opus of stupidity. What would you do if a man who quite obviously murdered your dad came into your house looking for a chip you had? You'd take a freaking shower, of course. I can't possibly see any other logical thing to do. Frick calling the police. I'm dirty from the floor and because I'm a teenage girl I can be as irrational as I want and it'll make sense. It is utter nonsense. And want to know what the kicker was? All of the conflict in the book is caused because she didn't call the freaking police. I stopped reading right after when she decided to take a shower. Well, that sounds phenomenally stupid. I was playing Call of Cthulhu Dark Corners of the Earth. I was alone and it was late. I got to the point in the game where you are stuck in a church and the townspeople are trying to break down the door to get to you. The game already had me tense and this scene was a stressful one. And at that moment, our cat decided to try and jump into the house through the closed window. There was a bang. There was a scream. Could not have been me. My voice don't go as high. There is an Alt plus F4. And all the lights in the house got switched on in record time. Little girl getting burned at the stake in Game of Thrones. Mr. White watching Jesse's girlfriend choke to death in Breaking Bad. Read this book series. My friends told me it's like an American version of Harry Potter. I made it up to the scene where they had sex while transformed into animals. I had my doubts about the quality of the books before then, but that was the actual point where I went, you know what? Nah. I'm watching the TV show right now. It's hot garbage trash, but goddamn does it entertain me. I'm gonna get crap for this because most people like it, but Rick and Mitchen being together. Why can't a male and a female just be really good friends? I feel uncomfortable seeing her smile. That Reddit story about the gay guy who was having sex with his dad. I understand it was about sex between men, but the story was written with very erotic undertones, like it was trying to arouse the reader and not tell them what happened. Any story written with that tone I just assume are made up by some fetishist rather than having actually happened. The Walking Dead. End of season 4. It wasn't any episode scene in particular, but I realized that the characters would never find happiness. By its very nature, the show could not end well, and I realized that it was leaving me emotionally exhausted. So I turned it off and haven't watched it since. Rick showing out that guy's jugular was intense AF. I'm usually impartial to that stuff, but that really got to me. Any political subreddit, no conclusions are made, no one supports each other's argument, and it's all black and white. It's either Viva la Revolution or Heil Hitler, same crap different pile. For some reason there's a lot more horror and gore in this thread than I was anticipating when I opened it. Good times. I don't consume much of that, but I just realized that I'm often done with something when a character that's supposed to be good and sympathetic is an unrepentant cheater. Glee was so happy with it for the first few episodes. Really got invested in many characters. Done after Blaine cheated on Kurt because they were apart for a few months and it was so hard and lonely, you guys. Wah. I had other issues with the series. Casual racism. Characters I cared about disappearing. New cast just cloned personalities of old cast. But that seemed so out of character for Blaine. Just to drum up drama. Done. Series awkward. Ugh. The main character cheating on two guys, but the show insisting she's lovable and cute. Choices are hard. You just don't understand. I hurt someone? What about my feelings and inability to let go of crushes? Manchester by the Sea. Ultimately didn't like the movie as much as most others I know and the critics did. But man, that movie could have redeemed itself for me if anyone had mentioned to the teenage boy that maybe having two girlfriends is crappy of you, and not something to be proud of. Or no, I'm not going to help you lie to these girls. Also, I was really hoping for the girls to find out about each other. Boo. Once upon a time, not on theme with the cheater problem. The fact that almost everyone must be related or connected, with a very soap opera feel to the relationships. The repetitive storylines and constant introduction of new characters with dropping of side characters that you wanted to care about. But oh well. I stopped watching right after meeting King Arthur, I think. Was deeply uninterested in him and Camelot. Cringe humor, especially if it's cringe love stuff. I can't stand it. I will get up and leave rather than watching that BS. Yeah, I'm not a fan of cringe humor at all. Only reason I watched Hot Tub Time Machine is because I was with friends. I never would have watched it otherwise. The Twilight book where Jacob realizes that Renesmee is his soulmate or whatever. I am completely ashamed I got that far into the series period tbh. Reading the transcript of the Toy Box Killer's tapes he would leave on a never-ending loop for his new victims as a sort of orientation. Crap fricked me up for a whole week. Do not read IT. There are some of you that are like, PFFT how bad could it be? Or I wonder if it'll affect me. IT will. Do not read IT. I got about halfway through the tapes before noping the frick off the internet for a while. That motherfucking rocking chair scene in The Woman in Black. Daniel Radcliffe is just approaching the rocking chair in the nursery that is moving on its own carrying just a hatchet and a flickering candle like a goddamn idiot. Then the ghost steps off the fricking chair to hang herself and the chair goes berserk. That fricked me up for weeks. Also, I had my eyes closed for the last 45 minutes of The Babadook, or horror film. I was 15 at the time. A self-help book written by some narcissist. He was complaining about how rich he was and had to suffer a slightly cramped legroom in first class. That was only page 15 of 100. When Piper got a swastika burnt into her skin and Orange is the New Black. I'm usually okay with fricked up stuff like that, but people getting disfigured and burnt is what sets me off. What fricked me up the most was how Piper was helpless and abandoned, but carried on to watch. And when Suzanne beat her that schizophrenic girl was pretty traumatic as well. And you know what happens in last episode? Crap got real in season 4. Man. Graphic animal cruelty in books. Sometimes I'll finish a book if it features such scenes, so long as it's not a recurring theme, but it's definitely not staying on my shelves. Once I've finished it, it's gone. I tried watching the first season of Grimm, but it made no sense that his only power was being able to spot demons. No special skills, super strength, or anything above a normal human. Just so happened to get lucky and beat the demons every time during that first season. Made no sense. That makes sense to me. Just don't think about it. It's a fun horror show. An article years ago on the sexual fad of crushing. Girls in high heels stepping on cute little animals like kittens until they die. Complete with video examples. Now I'm good. Yug, I knew about that, but I had no idea it was supposed to be arousing. The Amityville horror remake when the dead child ghost kid puts the girl's finger in her head wound. I got up and walked out of the theater. My buddy gave me crap about being freaked out. It didn't freak me out in the slightest. It was just freaking gross. Watching the UGR Arc V series. They spent so many episodes trying to rescue this one character who was separated from the group 40 episodes prior. When they finally meet her again, a villain has rockets pop out his legs, boost forward, grab her and just freaking fly away. These freaking rocket boots had never been mentioned before. After this moment, the show just carried on going downhill. The final villain was awful, and they're spending the last 8 episodes trying to make a baby smile. Anita Blake, Vampire Hunter book series. I like the first 6 or so books where she is a pretty good police consultant zombie raiser, but then the main characters turn into libido-driven sexual pretzels. I don't need to read about someone that flexible with lovers lining up like the DMV. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.